first overall pick. This one has been hotly contested based on the big mock drafts that are out there. The player that is expected to go in the first overall position is Zachary Rizache. But when you look at the betting markets, which often better reflect the overall sentiment around the draft, the typical player that is listed, it's not widely considered to be the most accurate. It's not a huge favorite here, but favored to go first overall is definitely Alex Sarr. But who do I have here for the Atlanta Hawks? Honestly, I think they could go either way. And I think that even though it's considered to be Alex Sarr, Rizache to go as the first two players in the draft, if a team there really likes what they see from a player, they might just go like off the board a little bit and go for a player that's not expected to go in this position. This draft really is wide open with the overall lack of high-tier talent. Unfortunately, it is what it is as it comes to this draft. But for me, I think that the player who should be the safest bet that the Atlanta Hawks should look to go to with that first overall pick, I am going to go with Alex Sarr. I just think you've got the most potential to find a player that is going to be really good for your team for a long period of time. Alex Sarr is the player that can be the defensive anchor for the team. I think that there's always going to need for that type of player. Look, you're finding a center here in Alex Sarr who, again, can anchor that defense. He is a monster on the inside when it comes to scoring. He's got great length, great size to the position, and there's some very good three-point upside here. There's a reason that he has been widely considered to be the number one prospect in the draft, and it does make sense for the Atlanta Hawks to go in this direction. Whether or not they want to trade Trae Young, I think that there is always going to be the need for a player like this, and I think that there is just a little bit more upside and a little bit of a higher floor when it comes to Alex Sarr compared to what Zachary Rizache can bring to the Atlanta Hawks. Ultimately, when it does come to draft night, I'm not going to be surprised either way if it is Rizache going number one or Alex Sarr at this present point. As we get closer to the draft, we usually have a much better idea. Market consensus for betting really does give you a good picture. Same with any report that comes from Woj. Maybe not Shams, who did mess up with the second overall pick last year, first overall pick with the shoe, and obviously with Victor Wembanyama. But for this year, the player that I would go with in the first overall position is going to be Alex Sarr. That's who I feel the most confident in to have the strongest career out of the group here. So going into, what have I done? Going into the second pick, it makes it pretty simple here. The second pick is going to be Zachary Rizache. I think this offers the Washington Wizards a pretty interesting opportunity here to kind of not be able to screw this draft up. It's clear that the top two players in the draft are Alex Sarr and Zachary Rizache. For the Wizards, they just take whichever one falls to them at second overall. And no matter what, they can't really look bad in drafting that player in the second overall position. The Atlanta Hawks certainly couldn't look bad. If Alex Sarr doesn't really pan out and Zachary Rizache does, well, the Atlanta Hawks look stupid. If the Wizards take Rizache and it's clear Sarr's the better player, well, he wasn't available. And it was clear that Rizache had to be the player that went second overall. So the Wizards can't really screw up in this position here unless they go off the board, and then we'll have to see. But if they go the safe bet, they're going to go for the player that is widely considered to be a top two player in the draft. Rizache has the potential to be a top-tier 3-and-D player. There's always going to be that sort of need here. He's got the defense already. He's got that positional versatility, specifically in the defensive positions. Brings that switchability as a forward that every team is looking for. Needs to prove himself a little bit more as an interior finisher and as somebody who can hit those jump shots. But, at the very least, he's knocking down threes. He's still young. He's already a very good defender. There's going to be a need for this in the NBA. So ultimately, again, it's a pretty safe pick for the Wizards here. It would also be a safe pick for the Atlanta Hawks to go with Rizache in the first position. But I'm going to go with Alex Sarr 1, Rizache at the 2. Now, the third pick here, this one has been widely mocked. The expectation is that the Houston Rockets do go with Reed Shepherd. And I'm just going to have to agree here. I think that this is the right play here. I think, first of all, Reed Shepherd, guard, short, yes, can play both guard positions. I think, thankfully for them, they've got size. Fred VanVleet, even though he's short, can play above his size. But Reed Shepherd really brings that mentality that I think that Ime Udoka is trying to instill within the team. But beyond maybe the fit mentally that Reed Shepherd brings, he is just an analytical dream. I'm not sure if that fits what the Houston Rockets are looking for necessarily the most, but he is. He's an analytical dream. He is hyper efficient on all three levels of play. Is an elite shooter, just completely elite shooter. That's just going to take away a lot of the problems that the lack of height maybe gives Reed Shepherd on the floor. But the shooting eliminates a lot of problems. Honestly, defensively, he is very good. I've written down there that he's a pesky defender. He it just has a great sense for the game, great feel for the game. This is a shoe-in, like top tier #1 pick in a lot of years if he has better height. He just doesn't. He just doesn't have that athleticism. But again, the overall feel for the game, the overall sense for the game, mixed with the hyper efficiency in so many different levels of the game, makes him a really good pick here for the Houston Rockets at number 3. Once again, I think it's really difficult to narrow in on specifics here with the draft here and just the wide range of outcomes that we could see. But I think that a good pick here for the Houston Rockets is Reed Shepherd, because that jump shot's always going to be there, and that's always going to be effective, and that's always going to be something that an NBA team is going to be able to use. Now we really start to get to where things can go off the boil here, where things can really change, really be different, especially with a team like the San Antonio Spurs, who have typically had the confidence to just get their guy in these spots. But I don't think that the San Antonio Spurs, with the 4th overall pick, are going to pass up on the opportunity to take a player who's got the tools to work with and the overall feel for the game, like Matas Buzelis. Again, I could see a guy like Buzelis falling maybe to the Spurs, get him at 8. I can see the Spurs passing on him altogether. He kind of slides into the latter stages of the top 10 or even the latter stages of the lottery here. But there's just too much upside and too many great tools to build with. I think that there is a good fit with Victor Wembanyama, which is something that the Spurs have to take into consideration. In this spot, the Spurs have typically looked for size and length, as a lot of teams do. Matas Buzelis can bring that. He can bring switchability. He can he can bring shot making to the team. And again, it's just not somebody I can see the Spurs passing on. Maybe in this position, they look to one of the point guards because they kind of do need a point guard. Maybe they feel as though they can address that with the 8th overall pick, so they ignore that, just get the best player available. I feel really good about the best player available in this position being Matas Buzelis. Therefore, he does end up in the 4th overall spot to the San Antonio Spurs. Let's move into the 5th overall pick here. This one's tough. Really tough to try and zero in on who the Detroit Pistons will end up going with that 5th overall pick. They've just had so many draft day, I wouldn't even call it blunders. They just haven't quite knocked one out of the park as of yet. They've just got a lot of good young players, maybe even like too many like decent players to work with. And I think somebody that brings something different here, and this one may be a bit of a cop-out because this is mimicking a lot of popular mock drafts right now, but I do buy into the Pistons going for a player like Cody Williams with the 5th overall pick. He's a big wing who has great levels of defense, and he's listed as a forward, but really the best position for him might be as a guard forward. And I think that's something that the Detroit Pistons can tap into a little bit more. Now, I don't think it's ideal for any prospect to end up in Detroit. Monty Williams kind of fell off the cliff as a coach last season here, but it's definitely a player who's got the size to be effective in the modern NBA. He's got good handling, especially on the open floor, knows how to score the basketball, and there's a great degree of upside here. This is a bit of a reach. Cody Williams could easily fall into the later stages of the lottery, much more than anybody else that I've listed here. But I buy into the Detroit Pistons buying into what Cody Williams can bring to their team. And I think that they would go for a player like this at 5th overall, especially considering the types of players around him. That there's just nobody in this spot here that really fits into what the Pistons kind of need. And I know you want to just go talent over fit at this point, but the Pistons have so many young players that they do have to start considering fit a little bit. And I think that Cody Williams kind of ticks the boxes for upside and for overall fit with the team. So I very much do like them going for Cody Williams and reaching a little bit with the 5th overall pick. Number 6, player that could go in the 4 or 5 spot for sure, but I think that this is a player that fits well with what they already have over there in Charlotte. That's Stephon Castle, point guard coming out of UConn, and he's got the size, and he is a fantastic defender. I don't think that this is going to take away touches from a guy like LaMelo Ball, a guy like Brandon Miller. I don't think that the Hornets want to go for a center in this spot. Therefore, guys like Clingan, who are mocked pretty highly in other places, I don't see them going Clingan here. I think Stephon Castle, they look at another guy who can handle the ball and help out at LaMelo Ball. I may have said Lonzo earlier. LaMelo Ball, of course. But the future of LaMelo Ball is uncertain. And if LaMelo Ball's not there, you can trust Stephon Castle with the ball in his hands. And if LaMelo's there, I think that Stephon Castle as well complements him pretty nicely. He needs to work on his jump shot. He needs to get that down a little bit better, especially the 3-point shot. But, if a guy is showing great signs of being a lockdown defender, that's not really going to go away in the NBA when he also has the size. So, Castle in this spot, I like him here. I like him a lot as a prospect. I can see him going higher, especially if the Spurs want a point guard. Stephon Castle would probably be the guy for them, but I don't see them passing Buzelis. I don't see the Pistons going for another guy who's not really bringing enough offense. So I think Castle can fall to 6. If he does fall to 6, I cannot see the Hornets passing up on the opportunity to take him. Number 7 on the list to the Portland Trailblazers. I'm going off of the consensus here. The consensus in this position for number 7 is that the Portland Trailblazers take Donovan Clingan. Why? They got DeAndre Ayton. Why would you draft another center? It's a fun idea that you could play a center and have DeAndre Ayton as the 4, but in actuality, that's dumb. And it's not getting the most out of DeAndre Ayton whatsoever. But bringing in some defense to this team was some offensive spark plugs overall. You've got a lot of offensive talent here with Portland. Bring in a guy who's going to bring in some athleticism and defense. And Ron Holland didn't really wow people at Combine and in workouts with his shooting. That's probably going to hurt his stock a little bit, but I just don't really see any other direction the Portland Trailblazers go here. Now, when it comes to the overall accuracy of this mock draft, everyone's got the Portland Trailblazers taking Donovan Clingan. So if they do take Clingan, Holland probably slides quite a bit here, and things really shake up for the rest of the top, or just for the rest of the lottery overall. But I just don't see why the Blazers would go Clingan. And I can see a whole lot of reasons why they prioritize switchability and athleticism in the forward spots to help with this team. Ron Holland makes a lot of sense and ticks a lot of the boxes that the Blazers need. If he starts to slip, I can see somebody trying to trade up to get him. 7 is maybe a touch too high, but I think that the max Ron Holland should end up is 11 in this draft. So I'm fine with putting him in the 7th overall position. Next up, at the 8th spot, going to the Spurs. This is where the San Antonio Spurs get their point guard. There's a few point guards they could go with here, but I don't think that there is any reason to pass up on Rob Dillingham if he does end up in the 8th overall position. A hyper-athletic point guard who can get his own shots. I think it would be a bit of a dream to work with Rob Dillingham. I misspelled his name, excuse me, but it's a D-I. D-I-L-L. Anyways, I think that there is a lot of reason for Dillingham to fit with Victor Wembanyama. Look, Dillingham is not the most savvy playmaker, but the shot making, the spacing that he could provide, this is just the best player available here. I think I actually kind of didn't term him correctly here in my description. He's not the most athletic point guard, but he is constant with self-creation, constant with shot making, consistently putting pressure on defenses. It is somebody that you are going to have to consistently worry about when it comes to him having the ball in his hands. I think that's going to aid Victor Wembanyama, and I think that Dillingham in his year with Kentucky was showing flashes of playmaking upside that I think the San Antonio Spurs of all teams are going to help be able to tap into, first of all. And I think that playing with a guy like Wembanyama, it's just going to make that passing and playmaking come a whole lot easier to him. This is the type of point guard that they have been missing. It takes a lot of pressure off their offense. And again, they need a point guard. This is the most talented one available in this position. Dillingham going 8 here makes sense to me. Again, I can see them going in different directions, but I like Rob Dillingham to go in the 8th overall spot, which leaves 9th overall, Donovan Clingan going to the Memphis Grizzlies. It's clear that this team needs a center. Why not bring in Clingan? He's mocked to go a lot higher in other spots. You know, the Spurs don't need a center. Look, you can try all day and say draft Clingan, play Wembanyama at the 4. The team was horrible with Victor at the 4. They got way better with him at the 5. He's just going to have to learn to play in that position. No need to make that more difficult on him and draft Clingan. I've already went through how the Portland Trailblazers have DeAndre and they don't need a center. Charlotte probably want to work with Mark Williams a little bit more. Don't see them going for a center. The Pistons definitely don't need a center, which leads Clingan to this position. I think at 9, we've just gone a little bit too far here, and we've got a team here in the Memphis Grizzlies who needs a center. Now, what I said about Victor Wembanyama is that he's better at the 5, but I'll tell you what, a power forward who's absolutely not better at the 5 is Jaren Jackson Jr. This guy won a freaking Defensive Player of the Year award playing with a rim protector where he can play as the 4 and be that help defender on the inside. That's where Jaren Jackson Jr. is at his best. And I think that the flashes of self-creation that Jaren Jackson showed in the most recent season are very promising and promising enough to have a lot of degree of confidence in not only play him as a 4 on defense where he is at his best, but to continue to play him as a 4 on offense and not really hurt the spacing too much. Clingan provides a really good pick and roll partner for Ja Morant. He provides that rim protection, interior scoring, and I think the fit here makes a ton of sense for the Grizzlies to go here. I can see them trading this pick as well. I could actually see them trading it to the Raptors and getting Jakob Poeltl, but if Donovan Clingan's available, this makes just too much sense to not go down here. Perhaps there's other talent available, but there's a really good balance of fit and talent for Clingan that I think makes too much sense, again, to not go for him at 9th overall, which brings us to the 10th overall pick, which is, hang on. Got to fix my graphic here and get rid of that thing that's covering it. All right. Which brings us to our 10th overall pick, and this is far enough for Dalton Knecht to go. 11's like maybe 12 should be Dalton Knecht's max. There's a few guys that the Utah Jazz could go with, but I know Knecht's on the older side, but with a team that already has some decent talent on their team, somebody who brings so much scoring power, brings so much floor spacing, and is ready to go from day one. Definitely a great look for the Utah Jazz to go here. They haven't really been keen on trading Markkanen, which makes me think they still want to be decent. The mentality from this team has consistently been to try and win games, and Dalton Knecht is going to help them do that from day one. Still a decent level of potential here. One of the more closer to the ceiling sort of prospects, but there is a reason why a couple months ago, Dalton Knecht was expected to go in like the 20s, low 20s, high teens, and now he's widely considered to be a top 10 pick, or at very least a lottery pick. Dalton Knecht to the Utah Jazz is where I'm going to go here. The Spurs might be interested. Definitely the Grizzlies might be interested. But I like him here to the Utah Jazz. Let's go through a little bit of the chat here. Let's see what people are thinking. Grogan, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Welcome back to the stream, Grogan. Thank you so much for coming through, hanging out. Glad to see you're doing better. Glad to see you back in the community. And again, I was hoping you're making some great progress here. Everybody is going to be so excited to see you out in the chat. Thank you so much. I'm surprised you don't have Knecht in the top 7. Yeah, I could see it. Definitely, if you just want that scoring power right away, especially like the Charlotte Hornets could maybe use something like that. I can see it. But I think some of these lower scale teams might prioritize a bit more upside, which is why I have him there, but definitely could go a bit higher. Could I see Clingan going to the Wizards? I personally really don't buy into the Clingan hype that he's been getting. which is also why I might have him a little bit lower here. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out completely, but I'd be pretty shocked on draft night if out of nowhere, Donovan Clingan got called at number 2. That would be quite the surprise. I think Riz SJ is safe for the Wizards. But yeah, as I was kind of saying earlier, there's not a ton of surprises here. Like this could shift around a lot, and if it does, Riz SJ maybe falls a little bit. I don't quite. I can see the Hawks taking him, but I don't quite get why Sarr is not the consensus number 1 guy in this draft. I don't know how you guys feel. Connect to the Pistons also does make sense. I could see them going that direction. But again, kind of feeling like upside might be more of a priority over there. Feeling better, back on my feet, finally home. That's awesome, Grogan. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you so much for continuing to update us along with the process. It is so amazing to see you back over there. Out in the community as well. Gregory, what's going on? How you doing? All right, guys, that is the top 10. Let's get into the rest of the lottery here. While we're paused here, great opportunity for you to take a second to hit that like button if you're enjoying the stream so far. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to get close to the NBA draft. There's going to be tons and tons and tons of draft content, more so specifically in the Raptors space, but I will be doing an updated version of this mock draft in 1 week's time, same place on next Tuesday, to just kind of amend anything I want to. You know what I mean? And see if there's anything different, because probably some different news is going to come out to change things. So let's go to the second column here, starting with the 11th pick. Again, a guy like Dellingham can easily fall here. I think that the way the draft I have it shaped up here kind of makes this one a bit difficult for the Chicago Bulls in the 11th overall position. I wouldn't rule out a trade from the Chicago Bulls just because there's kind of a gap. It makes it tough for them to pick here at 11, but best player here, I think, is Topic. I think if Nikola Topic does end up falling like quite a bit, I think he could still end in the latter stages of the lottery. It would just look really bad in a few years. Obviously, we're waiting to hear about the injury concerns. He tore his ACL. He's had some knee issues. Yes, as somebody who tore their ACL 1 year ago today. Exactly. Yes, I can understand there being complications with your knee, but if medical reports come back clear, this is not a guy that uses his athleticism to be effective, so I can kind of treat it as like it's not as important for him as it could be for other players. Here's a point guard who's 6'6", 6'7", amazing handles, just gets his own shot, knows how to find his own spots, knows how to get to the rim, and it finishes there extraordinarily efficiently. Has good upside from a shooting standpoint, shot like 30% in 23-24, but for somebody who's not even going to be 19 at the time of the draft, all this guy has ever done is adapt to his competition and excelled against his competition. There is so much talent here. This is a guy who's clearly going way higher in this draft if there are no knee complications. So this just has so much upside at 11 that Bulls in this spot got to go for the best player. If they rebuild, if they try to keep this thing going, Topic will still be effective regardless. Can't ignore the talent here for the Bulls at number 11. I could see them going for Connect, Dellingham, or Holland if they fall to this spot. But since they're not, I'm going to go with Topic here, which brings us to pick number 12. And for the Thunder, lot of ways that the Thunder could go here. But I actually think that it's going to be a little bit off script for what you would typically see from the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm going to go with Devin Carter at number 12. 6'3" point guard with a 6'8" wingspan, who is an elite defender from day one. He's on the older side of things for this NBA draft, but I remember like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I made a video saying that this is my guy for the Raptors at 19th overall. And what's great is that like not only might he be available, he should be available at 19 for the Raptors. He's typically considered to be an early 20s pick that the Raptors can snap up at 19. Well, not anymore. People have clued in. Devin Carter, I've seen as high as 8th in a variety of mock drafts, but I think this is a great fit next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So much better than what Josh Giddey provides this team. At the very least, He is an elite defender with great size, an amazing rebounder as well, crashing the offensive glass, getting those rebounds, defensive glass, pushing out, getting it out into space. And on top of those great things he brings already, he has shown some amazing flashes from three this season. Now, what we're going to have to wait and see with Devin Carter is the shooting real? Because he hasn't really shot that well in his college career until his last season, which brought him from a second-round pick to what is now looking like a lottery pick. Has shot the ball well seemingly at combines and in workouts, and I think that the Thunder think that this is just a really good fit here next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the rest of the group, that it's tough for them to pass on him here in the 12th overall spot. I think somebody who also provides this role with maybe slightly more upside but a lower floor is Jacoby Walter. I could see him going as high as 12 here to the Oklahoma City Thunder as well. I originally had him here, decided to change it closer to the last second before this. I'm going to go with Devin Carter in the 12th overall position. This leaves a pretty tricky spot for the Sacramento Kings, and I can see the Sacramento Kings actually maybe just passing on making a pick altogether and trading off this pick, but it's always hard to do that and predict that, so we do have them selecting, and guess who? It's Jacoby Walter, the guy said who could go 12 to the Thunder. Jacoby Walter can fall as far as a team like the Raptors in the 19th overall position, but it's such an elite combination of 3 and D here that Jacoby Walter brings to the floor, and I think that he complements Fox so well with what he brings there that this is just a play you can't really afford to ignore here. De'Aaron Fox is not the most savvy defender. Jacoby Walter is, and he brings spacing. I just think this is a really good fit and a lot of talent and a good amount of upside here for the Sacramento Kings to go within the 13th overall position that they can't be upset with. This could be a guy coming off the bench or starting. I think he brings a lot of the qualities that Davion Mitchell does on defense, but with a bit more size and more offensive prowess for sure. Jacoby Walter would love this for the Raptors as well. We fell that far, and I think he can, but I have him up pretty high here because look, everybody's out here looking for 3 and D. Everyone's looking for shooting and spacing. Everyone's looking for defense. Jacoby Walter very clearly brings both of those things to the table at the 2. Which brings us to the final pick of the lottery here, where I am going to have Tijan Salon going to the Portland Trailblazers. The reason I have him falling here, he's been slated to go a little bit higher. He's versatile. He's raw in the power forward position. But there's a lot of upside in a lot of areas, just a solid foundation to work with. But he's raw. It's going to take time. Guess who has time on their side to work with a prospect? It's the Portland Trailblazers. And I think that they will see the upside here and feel as though they can be the team that's patient and wait for that development to happen. So this is the farthest that I'm going to say Salon will drop. And I'm going to have the Portland Trailblazers taking him here to round off all of the lottery picks for our 2024 first round mock draft. So if you're watching live right now, you're going to see the rest of the first round. And, of course, the 19th overall pick where the Raptors are selecting. But if you're watching this back on the Clips channel, if you want to see the rest of the draft, head over to the main channel, Amateur Sports. Check this out. But I hope you enjoyed here on the Clips channel for the top 14 picks. And I hope you enjoyed it enough to see what I have for the rest of the draft.